Alexander.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for including me in your hearing today. I appreciate it very much, and I congratulate you for your leadership on this subject, you and Senator Heitkamp both. It may not be the sexiest topic in Washington, but it is at home. I mean, I think in all of our states, at least in Tennessee, Washington, D.C. looks like a Mount Vesuvius of rules, regulations, guidances spewing forth from all directions, and it's what I hear about as much as any other issue. So thank you for the subject, and thank you for your leadership. Let me ask Ms. McIntosh about Department of Education. In June of last year, at a hearing of our Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, Catherine Lehman, the Assistant Secretary for the Office of Civil Rights in the department, was testifying, and this was the exchange we had. Alexander, Ms. Lehman, you talk about something called guidance, and I've got here about 66 pages of guidance under Title IX. Now, do you expect institutions to comply with your Title IX guidance documents? Lehman, we do. Alexander, you do? What authority do you have to do that? Alexander, why do you not go through the same process of public comment and rule and regulations that your department is going through under the Clery Act? Lehman, well, we would if they were regulatory changes. Alexander, why aren't they regulatory changes? You require 6,000 institutions to comply with this, correct? Lehman, we do. Alexander, then who gave you the authority to do that? Lehman, well, with gratitude, you did when I was confirmed. Now, Ms. McIntosh, do you believe that we gave Ms. Lehman the authority to make Title IX guidance binding on 6,000 higher education institutions?
Thank you, Senator Alexander, for that question. As you know, I wasn't there during
I know, but I read
that
the
exchange.
Let
me assure you, I tried to be very clear in my opening statement that guidance that the department issues does not have the force of law.
But this is the Assistant Secretary of the Department with Title IX, which affects 6,000 institutions, 100,000 public schools, and she apparently hasn't gotten the word. Who's going to tell her?
So,
you?
As she knows and as I know, Title IX is the binding law that applies in the cases that
so guidance under Title IX is not binding, is that correct?
Guidance under Title IX is not binding. Guidance helps the many people who are subject to Title IX understand what they need to do to comply with the law.
Well, who's going to tell Ms. Lehman this?
I've had the discussion with Ms. Lehman, and she is fully agreeing with the
Or did she just have a lapse of memory that day?
I can't speak to what happened that day.
Well, let me pursue this. The chairman mentioned a bullying guidance. Now, that's a guidance, right, under the department. On the website, it's not listed as a significant guidance. Am I correct about that?
I don't have it on my list of significant guidance, but let me describe the process that...
Well, but before you do that, if it is a significant guidance, according to the Office of Management and Budget, there ought to be some input, right, from those affected.
The procedures for significant guidance are very clear in the OMB bulletin,
right,
and we follow those.
But apparently this was not a significant guidance. Now, that's odd to me because bullying is a big subject. We've had a big debate on it in the United States Senate. We just passed in the Senate a reauthorization of Higher Education, Elementary and Secondary Act, which got 81 votes, 83 if all the senators had been there. It was bipartisan, and the one overriding subject that we agreed on both sides of the aisle was we didn't want a national school board. And we didn't have any agreement among ourselves on whether we should be telling 100,000 public schools what their discipline and bullying policy should be. So where does the Department of Education get the authority even to issue a guidance or even a rule or a regulation on bullying? Where is that in the law if the United States Senate thinks that it's making the law on bullying or not?
Well, first of all, Senator Alexander, thank you very much for your leadership in the bipartisan work that the Senate has done toward a new ESEA bill. I think the bullying guidance that you're talking about stems from civil rights law that is also a law of Congress, and
But it doesn't say anything about bullying, and you're talking about Title VI, is it, of the Civil Rights?
I think you would agree that bullying could be a serious problem and a civil
It is a serious
violation,
problem,
right.
but the United States Senate doesn't agree
Well,
that the federal government ought to be telling the local school what its bullying policy ought to be. So how does the Department of Education get the right to make a guidance, which would be under Title IX, when the head of Title IX thinks everybody she issues a guidance to has to do what she says?
so the Office of Civil Rights, according to the laws of Congress, gets complaints about civil rights violations from schools, from higher ed institutions, from students all over the place. Some of those complaints relate to bullying, and it is up to the Office of Civil Rights to follow up on all complaints about civil rights violations.
But Ms. McIntosh, and my time is up, it's not up to the Office of Civil Rights to make a law when the federal law doesn't say anything about bullying and the United States Congress is still debating it. Then off she goes as a national school board telling 100,000 schools, whether they're a native Alaskan school or whether they're in the mountains of Tennessee, this is how you ought to handle your discipline
Senator,
problem.
we did not make any law or any new binding requirements with the
Well,
bullying.
she says her edicts are binding, and she issued a guidance on bullying, and to me, that's not appropriate.
And I
So my
think
time is
I've
up,
been
Mr. Chairman.